Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Pam Popper Show, which is brought to you by Wellness Forum Health, the Wellness Forum Institute, and Make Americans Free Again, Wellness Forum Foundation. Couple of announcements. First of all, the free microbiome workshop was held last night, and if you did not get a chance to join us, you can watch it for free by watching the recording. So send me an email if you'd like. I'll send you the link, and you can watch it anyway. It was a great workshop, lots of great information that I think a lot of people hadn't heard much about, such as the connection between your gut microbiome and mental health and that sort of thing. So just send an email, I'll send you the link and you can see it on your own time. I'm going to start today with a question from a viewer that came in my email. And here is what this person asked. I was recently speaking with a friend about not drinking soda, even diet soda, because it spikes insulin. She said her husband's a type 1 diabetic, and he says that my pancreas doesn't work to produce insulin, so it doesn't matter for me anyway. I thought this might be a good question for your newsletter, an opportunity to discourage soda and encourage more water. And I thought it would be a good thing to talk about. Okay, so lots to talk about here. And first, drinking lots of soda or not, or diet soda, it just has less to do with glucose or insulin spikes than it does with hydration. The body hydrates best with water. Too many people drink a lot of fluid, but not much water. And we encourage people to make water the first choice beverage, always. Second, insulin production is a normal response to glucose in the bloodstream. Diet soft drinks don't increase glucose levels much, but even if you drink sugar-laden soft drinks, if they're consumed with high fiber beans and rice, for example, glucose levels might not be much higher at all. So it's easy to simplify things and, this is good and this is bad, but it doesn't result in best answers to questions or solutions to problems. And what I'm getting at is the entire pattern of eating is much more important than whether or not you had a Diet Coke or a sugar version of Coke or whatever, right? The most important thing for a type 1 diabetic is to consume an optimal diet because if you do it, you'll reduce your insulin needs and also reduce the risk of coronary artery disease because diabetics, the number one cause of death for them, particularly type 1 diabetics, is coronary artery disease, not diabetes. So how much insulin a type 1 diabetic requires is a predictor of both the risk for comorbidities and expected lifespan. Lower insulin needs equals longer lifespan, fewer comorbidities. So I'll cite a study conducted several decades ago. And just after 3 weeks on a low-fat, plant-based diet, the type 1 diabetics in the study were able to lower their insulin requirements by 40%, and their cholesterol dropped by 30%. 3 weeks, all right? The insulin-dependent type 2 diabetics were able to completely discontinue their insulin. So high fiber, low fat, plant-based diet. So the bottom line is it's not just about less soda and more water. It's about dietary pattern. And that's what you have to get right if you want optimal health. So I'll just insert a quick announcement here. I'm going to do one last free class for health professionals. I'm going to offer it on December 6th, which is a Saturday from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time via Zoom. We'll record it. And basically, my point of view on everything is that there's never been a better time to consider establishing an independent practice. And there are really good opportunities for both licensed and unlicensed health professionals. So this workshop is for anybody who's thinking of starting a health-related practice, people who want to get tips on how to expand their existing practice. We'll talk about how to identify and attract your target market, suggestions for services to offer, and proven marketing ideas. I'm going to allocate some of the time for how to help cancer patients because an increasing number of them are realizing that they can't just, for many types of cancer, get conventional care and expect it to help them to survive. They are really looking for alternatives and people who know how to help them evaluate information. So I think this is a skill that's good to have if you're in the healthcare business. Now, for this workshop, it's not for cancer patients and it's not for people who just like to hang out with me, although I'm super flattered that you do. It really is for people in the healthcare field, licensed or unlicensed, or people who are super serious about entering the healthcare field. So we might want to talk to you on the phone a little bit about it before you sign up. So pampopper@msn.com, send me an email. I'll be super happy to get you signed up for this. Okay, so I have one big news item to cover. It's going to take a little bit of time. And if what I say is interesting, you can ask me, you can email me and ask me for a PDF of it that you can even pass on to other people. But I've been asked to comment on last week's announcement from the White House about lowered prices on weight loss drugs. And I'll just start by saying I am profoundly disappointed in President Trump, RFK, and all of the people involved in this decision. And I'm just flabbergasted at the ignorance or stupidity, whichever way you look at it, of our government officials. They have no idea what they're doing, and they have no idea the consequences, which you and I are going to pay for: higher taxes, higher healthcare costs, higher health insurance costs that will result from this decision. So I saw the press conference, but in case you didn't, I went to the White House website and I've got the link in the article that I'll send you if you like, that includes excerpts from the press conference online. So it starts by saying the agreement represents a historic reduction in prices for Americans on the two drugs with the highest annual expenditures in the United States, both of which help adults struggling with diabetes, heart disease, that's Ozempic and Wegovy, obesity, and other conditions. Now, as a side note, these drugs don't do this. We'll get to that soon enough, right? So the prices of Ozempic and Wegovy will fall from $1,000 and $1,350 a month, respectively, to $350. The price of Zepbound and or Foglipron, if approved, will fall from $1,086 a month to an average of $346. And then when the oral versions of the drugs are available, it'll be $150 per month. So we're going to make the drugs supposedly more affordable, more available to more people. They even lowered the threshold. You only have to have a BMI of 27 to qualify for the drugs, and Medicaid will pay for it. The document includes this statement, which is probably the one that, made me the angriest. Quote, "Making America healthy again. President Trump promised to ensure the American healthcare system is promoting health and addressing the root cause of chronic disease. Today's announcements represent historic progress on meeting this promise," end of quote. So my response is this. To be clear, there is nothing about these drugs that will make anybody in the United States healthy again. The root cause of obesity is not Ozempic deficiency or lack of access to these drugs. Costs for healthcare are going to skyrocket as a result of this ridiculous and careless decision, and I will provide detail here. During the press conference, Trump, RFK, and others stated that thanks to their great negotiating skills with drug companies, poor people who are doomed to eat fast food since it's cheaper than produce, that was actually said, will now have access to these weight loss drugs. First, fast food is not less expensive than healthy food, and I know that because of my personal involvement working with very poor people to help them eat healthy diets. It was the Sacramento Food Bank Project in California, and it showed that we proved that economically disadvantaged people can and will eat healthier diets while relying on SNAP, WIC, and the food bank. So it would take a long time to go into all of this here. So I'll just give you the bottom line. All but one person finished the program, which involved teaching the participants the science behind plant-based eating and how to shop for and prepare healthy foods. In just 28 days, there was an 84% reduction in prescription medications and 75% reduction in the costs of medication. Just 28 days, all right? Poor people do not need Ozempic. They need education about how to live healthy lives and assistance in making positive changes. Of course, RFK and others use this opportunity to discuss their war on processed foods, another issue about which they don't know anything at all. The NOVA system for evaluating processed foods was not developed to assess the nutrient content or quality of processing. Rather, it was designed to categorize food based on degree of processing. So, in an absurd way, whole wheat bread and almond milk are highly processed, and lard, which some of Kennedy's good friends think we should be consuming more of, is not. So it would be the better choice. And I could give you 15 different examples like that that have actually come from the mouths of people who advised Kennedy. But let's get back to the weight loss drugs. Some doctors who have a conscience and who actually care are starting to wake up and realize how awful the weight loss drugs are, which is an interesting contrast to the enthusiasm for them that was expressed in the press conference. Dr. Christopher McGowan describes himself as an obesity medicine specialist and an early and vocal advocate for GLP-1 therapy, to the extent that he was a public spokesperson for it. And he talked about their unprecedented efficacy against obesity. Today, he has a totally different idea about them. He acknowledges that the drugs work, that people who can afford, tolerate, and sustain their use do lose some weight. But he also notes that they work only to the extent that people can take them indefinitely, and most people don't. And can you imagine what would happen, back to the expense factor, if everybody who's overweight in our country took them indefinitely? It would bankrupt our entire society. So back to McGowan. Research shows that 75% of patients stop GLP-1 drugs due to the cost, side effects, and their unwillingness to take any drug indefinitely. Now, the Trump administration supposedly has taken away the issue of cost, but you still have the side effects. I'm going to tell you some of them right here. They're heinous, and they include low blood sugar, nausea, heartburn, vomiting, stomach pain, diarrhea, constipation, sore throat, symptoms of stomach flu, dizziness, thoughts about self-harm, signs of thyroid tumor-like swelling or lump in the neck, trouble swallowing, symptoms of pancreatitis, gallbladder disease, kidney disease, and stomach paralysis. Other than that, they're just swell. The meds increase the risk for vision loss, which doesn't usually get better after discontinuation. The side effects are so heinous that one study showed that almost 65% of patients taking Victoza, Wegovy, and Ozempic stopped the drugs, with gastrointestinal side effects being the leading reason. Now, this has led to the development of another drug that reduces the nausea and vomiting, supposedly allowing more people to take the ill-advised drugs for a longer period of time, just adding more cost and more side effects and more problems to what is already a ridiculous situation. So our healthcare costs are going to skyrocket. Of course, after stopping the drugs, any progress made is reversed quickly. One trial showed that patients taking the drugs lost weight, but a year after discontinuation, they regained 2/3 of their weight back. McGowan says his patients report that they feel ravenous and overwhelmed by the return of the mental noise around food, and that one of the worst aspects of the debacle is the psychological toll it takes on patients who feel both blame and shame due to yet another failed attempt to lose weight. Their self-confidence declines even more. McGowan reinforces what I've been saying since the craze began. Patients are actually worse off after taking the drugs than they were before. They lose muscle mass while they're taking them, which is generally not recovered after discontinuation. Additionally, most of the weight they regain is fat, which means that they're metabolically worse off than they were before they took the drugs. So let's talk about why you want to have a lean body. Why is this so important, and going backwards is such a big issue? Well, people who have muscular bodies have a higher basal metabolic rate, which results in higher calorie burn. So I don't know anybody who wouldn't argue with the math that if you're more muscular, you don't have to worry about calorie intake as much as when you are over fat. Muscles use glucose for energy, which helps with glucose control. This is particularly important since most obese people are diabetic or well on their way to becoming diabetic. Skeletal muscle serves as an endocrine organ, regulating hormones, including those that enhance energy expenditure. Loss of muscle mass combined with increased fat mass, which is what the drugs result in, results in at least two big problems. And the first one is instability and weakness, which can result in an inability to live independently. I mean, frailty is a very common reason for ending up in a nursing home. I've never known anybody who aspires to spend their final years in one of these places, but people who aren't capable physically of living on their own end up there. I mean, I don't know anybody who purposefully does, who said when they were 45, gosh, I just hope I can live in a nursing home for the last 10 or 15 years of my life. The other issue is that when patients stop taking the drugs, usually due to the side effects, the rebound weight gain is fast and significant because muscle burns more calories than fat. 14 calories per day versus 3 calories per pound, respectively. So the patients are often fatter than they were before they took the drug, and the rebound weight gain is much faster than how it came off. They gain it back faster than they took it off. All of this sounds dismal, but there is a way to lose weight, and we've known about it for decades. And I know you're tired of hearing me say it again and again and again, but it's true. Low-fat, plant-based eating. A 5-year study led by Dean Ornish and published in 1998 compared a group of patients who consumed a plant-based diet, engaged in aerobic exercise, received training in stress management, and who had group support with a usual care control group. The plant-based group lost almost 24 pounds at the end of a year, and after 5 years kept half of it off. The control group experienced worsening health and weight gain with continued progression of coronary atherosclerosis. So one group went forward, the other group went backward. Another study compared outcomes for patients who were obese or overweight with at least one comorbidity. One group consumed a low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet, while the other received standard care. At 6 months, BMI reduction for the plant-based group was 4.4 points versus 0.4 for the standard care group. Other studies have shown similar results, and many report not only weight loss, but lower cholesterol levels, blood pressure, lower fasting glucose levels, and other improvements in markers of health. Many of these studies are over 20 years old, and one of the things that is super important, I think, is none of them include portion control, which people don't like and almost never maintain. You can eat a lot of food on a low-fat, plant-based diet. Listen, people, we don't need more research. We just need to pay more attention to the existing body of evidence for guidance on how to help patients lose weight and improve their health. A major impediment is that there is so much less money to be made teaching people to eat plants than there is in making, distributing, and prescribing drugs. The bottom line is that we can expect that the enthusiasm for weight loss drugs and the now lower prices will increase availability and create a bigger mess than the one created by opiates. Millions of people are taking these drugs, and their weight loss is temporary at best. At some point, both the cost, even the lower cost, it's still going to be a cost issue, and the side effects will result in discontinuation for many, if not most people. Multiple lawsuits have already been filed due to severe side effects, including many deaths. At some point, doctors and medical centers may refuse to prescribe them due to liability concerns. What will happen to people who took these drugs? They won't just be back to where they started from. They will be worse off because it will be even more hard to lose weight. So I'll restate what I said in the beginning of this segment. The people in charge of healthcare and healthcare policy in the US have no idea what they're doing. The decisions they're making in many areas are ill-advised, and they're going to have catastrophic consequences. Does anybody really think that the smiling pharmaceutical executives standing in the Oval Office last week are stupid or they care at all about the health of Americans? They probably opened and shared very expensive bottles of champagne after the meeting was over. They managed to get our stupid politicians and health officials to make the drugs available to almost anybody who wants them, knowing that expense is one of the biggest reasons for discontinuation and lack of coverage by insurance companies. They are trading off the larger profit on a smaller number of patients for a smaller profit on exponentially bigger number of patients. The president and RFK and the others involved in this are unwitting pawns in a game controlled by convicted criminals. Almost every drug company that does business in the United States has been convicted of criminal wrongdoing, some of them dozens and dozens of times. Add to that FDA Chief McCary and his idea that we're going to use warp speed for all drug approvals. It takes your breath away. But I guess that means the pill version of these abominations will most certainly be available soon. It was one of the most depressing days I've had in a long time to watch this, and because I do understand what's going to happen as a result. And I'm usually right about these things, and I'm not saying that to be arrogant, but some of you have watched me for a long time. I am really careful about what I say, and I'm always right about it because I am so careful. So I said before, I'll reiterate, if you would like a PDF version of this with the references, just send me an email at pampopper@msn.com, and I'll be happy to send it to you. And I hope you'll pass it on to a lot of other people too. I'll finish with some feedback regarding our recent Happy Healthy You bootcamp from a relatively new member. She writes, quote, "I had to tell you how much I love the Happy Healthy You. It was awesome. Hope you do a part 2. We will. I've lifted weights for 12 years nearly every day, but Alec had stuff I never did before, and it sure challenged me. Heidi's yoga was very hard for me, but I seem to be getting better. I'll keep watching the replays and do both 2 times a week. Thank you so much for a great boot camp." She also says, "I love the Pam Popper show. It was awesome. You always share great news, but interviewing Heidi was fun. It was great to get to know her. And next week's video will feature another interview." So you can still purchase access to the boot camp. I can send you the link to the free microbiome workshop, and I hope you'll register for the healthcare workshop if you are a healthcare professional. That's it for today. As usual, I hope you pass this video on to other people who would enjoy watching it, learning from me, and I will be back to you next week with more news. Thank you so much for joining me today.